While at war with the Duke Gaucelin I of Burgundy for the county of Anjou, King John the Kind perished on the 27th of March 1169, having just put his seal to an acceptance of Burgundy's surrender. King John the Third, along in the host, and hoping to become a brave defender of the faith, sought out Jacques, Count of Nantes, for tutelage, then set about placating the vassals of Aquitaine in the usual manner with gold and honors. Berenguer de Souvigny was granted the county of Poitiers, and André de Inin the county of Bordeaux, at least until Jean could find pretext to reclaim them. Word came back from Burgundy that Anjou was now a vassal of Aquitaine on the 4th of April 1169, and the reign of John III began with a conquest that he didn't even have to fight for. On the word that Duke Blasi was filled with hatred for John III, men were sent to seize him, but he evaded capture and raised his levies in rebellion. In the winter of 1170, the young king had a close call with consumption, but happily it was not lasting. While John's host fought in Outremer, word arrived of a faction seeking lower crown authority in the realm, and their willingness to back words with force. Advised that his father had only instituted high law in order to obtain primogeniture, John gladly acceded to their reasonable demand, then continued with the war against Blasi, throwing him in the dungeon in May 1170. 2 peaceful years followed, with King John III reaching his majority in winter 1172. Owing to the mentorship of King John the Kind and Jacques, Count of Nantes, John III began adult life competent in all ways and a recognized expert in the art of war. King John married Bertha von Asperg in March of 1172, announcing his hope that a boy child would soon come. Peace prevailed in Aquitaine, with many new improvements to John Domain's strongholds and rapid conversion to Christianity of the counties in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. For John's constant efforts to win the Holy Land for Christendom and his sinless and courageous life, the Pope recognized John as a true Christian knight in 1174, greatly improving his position with the Church. Though no troubles vexed Aquitaine, King John fell ill with a lingering malady that hounded him from January 1175 until February 1176, boding ill for his longevity. In 1177, Queen Bertha finally showed with child, and in autumn of that same year a healthy daughter, Elaine, was born. In the winter of 1178, a feast that shall ever go down in the annals as the Great Feast of 1178 was held. King John had laid on a mountain of drink, which was consumed in an orgy of intoxication, puke and ruination of shoes, and enraged murder over the course of 26 days. All attendees left acknowledging that it was the year's best feast. Still hungover, King John declared war on Queen Catherine I of France for the county of Narbonne in March 1178. By April, France had called in Scotland on their side, and John responded by calling England in on Aquitaine's side. In March 1180, a second daughter, Ermesence, was born, and John continues beating upon French strongholds in Languedoc. Can John III conclude the war for Narbonne without complication? John was able to conclude his warlike business with France without interruption, and in August 1180 received of Queen Catherine I the county of Narbonne. To celebrate, John held a grand tournament. Then a peaceful decade began, with the most important business for many years being the many merchants pleading their love suits for the many daughters of the de Poitou dynasty. Not wishing to complicate succession, John held out for many years, but eventually gave in on some suits. John even had leisure to pursue gardening, a pastime that improved the administration of his domain. Remembering the great feast of 1178, John held another, and drunken hilarity ensued as nobles, remembering the fame of Count Fabrizio's shoes, tried to outdo one another in vomiting and murder. Peace could not last forever, and in 1189, Caliph Ismail called for a jihad against Genoa for the Kingdom of Mauritania. This was followed only months later by a second call for jihad. As if all of this were not enough, John lost his loyal steward Fabrizio. It is said the stress of planning the next feast was too much for him. The Maghreb is embroiled in war, and King John III stands on the verge of a momentous decision. Will he fight loyally for his ally Genoa, or will he further his own desire to build the Kingdom of Jerusalem to its rightful and just borders? The Usamid Sultanate locked into jihad with Genoa in the Maghreb. King John the Third considers launching a crusade of his own to build the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and declares holy war for the Duchy of Galilee on the 25th of February, 1190. This effort stretches Aquitaine's capacity for war to the limit, and a nervous campaign ensues, with thousands of men at arms braving the long ocean voyage to do battle in Outremer. Thankfully, the Usamid Sultanate cannot easily raise a host large enough to do battle against two foes at once, and John storms walled stronghold, city, and mosque without opposition in 1190. By March 1191, the war is close to over. However, while marching to storm the few remaining strong places in Safed, John hears word that at last a Saracen host marches east to undo his work. A pitched battle ensues before the gates of Tiberias, the Aquitanian host crushing the Saracens and retaking the birthplace of the Savior and the bishopric of Chastelet. Terms are put to Sultan Jalal al-Din the Cruel on the 25th of November, and the Duchy of Galilee falls to King John the Third. Within the year, King John then declares war on the Emir Sharif for Acre, the last county still under Muslim rule in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and grants leave for the Knights Templar to build the castle of Belvoir in Safed. John is able to quickly conclude this war, and on the 18th of September 1192, the Kingdom of Jerusalem in its entirety is under Aquitanian submission. As the echoes of John's triumphal celebration slowly fade, a boy, John, is born in January 1193. Within the fortnight, John is on campaign again, this time for the Sinai, a dusty expanse of lightly peopled sand to the south of Jerusalem. Barely rested from the previous year's campaign, Aquitaine again rises to do battle, loading men, weapons, provisions, and horses for war in the Sinai. Stretched this time beyond its native strength, King John hires the Breton Company and the Swiss Company in June 1193, bringing them to El Eilat to ensure the speedy defeat of the Saracen host at Arish in December, then marching east across the open desert to the Emirate of Baghdad. The exceeding dryness of Arabia introduces dangers as the hosts were forced to march separately. A second boy, Raymond, was born while John marched east, and as he moved deeper and deeper into Saracen lands, his heart was at ease that his line was doubly secure, and he was moved to express his love for Berkta, good wife she had been for all these years of toil and war. At the end of October 1195, Emir Tayyib I sent word of surrender, and Aquitanian Outremer obtained the 4 counties of the Sinai for Christendom. The Levant, being unable to raise its own defense, John raised additional retinues in the spring of 1197, and they arrived at the height of summer to bolster the young kingdom. In February of 1198, word came of the defeat of Genoa at the hands of Emir Wahid, while John's court chaplains worked ceaselessly to win the counties of Outremer for the cross. By July, glorious news of Genoa's successful defense against Caliph Davoud reached the Levant, and by 1199, the counties of Tyrus, Farama, and Eilat took the cross. The decade ends with the Kingdom of Jerusalem fully, if but tenuously, established in the Holy Land. John has led in numerous sieges, battles, ambushes, and diversions, always in the most dangerous place, to the very great glorification of his name. Disease runs rampant across the Kingdom of Jerusalem in the autumn of 1200, and King John flees it at the head of his host, taking refuge in Beirut. Restless in this self-imposed quarantine and noting gravely the division in the Holy Roman Empire, John stakes his amassed fortune and the lives of his men on a gambit for the county of Vivarais, rightfully belonging to Aquitaine. Respectful of the power that the Holy Roman Empire represents even in this weakened state, John contracts with the Swiss band and the Breton band, reliable companies who did good service for him in Outremer. So seriously does John take the coming battle that he undertakes the enormous task of bringing men from Outremer, leaving the Kingdom of Jerusalem undefended in the hope that he can beat down his foe the more rapidly. By June 1201, having yet to see armed opposition, but hindered by the relative scarcity of provender in Vivarais, Forez, and Vienne, John sends a force west around the rear of his hosts, intending to attack Bourgogne. The Holy Roman Empire's quiescence soon fades, as a large host appears in Savoy in August. Fearing the might of his foe, John breaks off from a stalled siege in Forez and reinforces the host in Vienne. This in turn gives pause to the imperial host, and they divert to Lyon, possibly to attempt to cut off John's smaller host in the north. John halts his forces moving south to Vienne and reinforces them in Forez from the forces in the north. The imperial host, not wishing to tangle with such a large mass of men, withdraws to Savoy, and John orders assaults in all places currently under siege. By December 1201, John gambles that the imperial host is in no mood to fight. Dividing his forces to avoid starvation in this thinly provisioned region, he attacks Savoy and Bourgogne simultaneously, but then decides to join his hosts in Bourgogne. This turns out to be propitious, as it draws out the imperial host and a battle is fought in Genève at the turning of the year. John commits all of his forces into the battle, and over the course of 2 months of hard fighting wins a great victory. Unable to resist, the Holy Roman Empire surrenders Vivarais in April 1202. The county is obtained at the cost of several hundred gold and some 15,000 lives, and John is one step closer to restoring Aquitaine to its boundaries of old. 2 years later, in March 1204, John raises fire and sword to seize Carcassonne from France. The King of France, try though he might, could not resist, and surrendered Carcassonne before the end of the year. A period of generous spirit prevails in the wake of these victories, and John gives leave to his sister, Elaine, to marry the newly created Count of Carcassonne in 1205. Having no legal outlet for his acquisitive urges, King John hatches a plot to revoke the county of Bordeaux in 1206, favoring it as the seat of Aquitaine. Count Domingue, presented with a demand that he should relinquish the county, refuses, and is hauled off to the dungeon in short order. Continuing to feel secure, John married the Princess Ermesens to the Count of Safed in 1206, then moved the capital back to Bordeaux. The work begun by John the First was finally completed in 1207, when the Duchy of Navarra became a legal entity of the Kingdom of Aquitaine. In January 1209, Prince John reached his majority. His youthful promise had come to full flower, though unlike his father, his skullduggery and scholasticism was somewhat weak. Prince Raymond reached his majority in 1210. A stronger diplomat and tactical commander than his older brother, he was nonetheless somewhat weak in other areas. Both sons of King John have great potential. King John the Great enters the winter of his life having accomplished many deeds, and having been considered a paragon of nobility for so long he cannot remember not being so thought. He closed out the last vestiges of his youth pondering a map of the de jure kingdoms of Europa, noting with concern the slow creep of England into France and Lotharingia into Burgundy. Troubled at being at a loss to address these matters, he dictates a letter to be handed to his sons on the occasion of his death. Alright, well, things have been running entirely too smoothly so far, so I'm going to go ahead and change it to Gavelkind. Gavelkind is the sort of pure inheritance law, train wreck, nightmare scenario that creates a lot of good drama and a lot of interesting play and a lot of unintended things, so that's what I'm going to do. Now, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and begin trying to correct it right off the bat by revoking the Prince-Bishopric of Agen, which I will give to the other inheritors in order to take them out of the succession and get all of the titles back to one inheritor. Because I don't mind primogeniture, I just like having to work for it on a case-by-case or a generation-by-generation basis. So we got a fair amount of plot power here. This might or might not go peaceably. Okay, not peaceably. So we'll have to go through the formality of raising the levies and storming into his holdings and dragging him out by his feet. Not really concerned about any token resistance he may be able to put up. Okay, so while that's going on, let's go ahead and disband all of these troops that will not be necessary for the rather limited task of taking down one Prince Bishopric. Oh yes, yeah, we'll definitely be using that. The goal is for King John to take as many counties as he can in the last couple of years of his life. And done. Let's try this again. Gather up all those troops there. Make sure I include that one over there all the way out in Persia. That always ends up being the hassle. One thing that's interesting about troop levies with version 1.10 is that they do not raise up fully ready to go. As you see, their morale is lower right off at the start, and then it raises up. So definitely some interesting implications in terms of how that works. This is a new thing too. You get hostages from sieges as well. They're almost always useless, but I suppose at some point, you know, I should pay a little bit more attention as to who they are and who they belong to. Alright, and done. Let's get him working in Brittany and see whether we can just keep this going. Take the entire peninsula. Should I lift that excommunication? Oh. Do I want Craven? No. Some more feast events might be nice to have. Sigh. Alright, so about 1 month left for the truce with the Holy Roman Empire. Good, all my counselors are doing what they need to be doing. Not a lot to do with opinion right now. Everybody is relatively happy. So right now we're mostly just waiting for the money to stack up and for forged claims to come in and provide me the opportunity to go to war. Not a bad way to make a living. So, yeah, the new technology system. You get a chance to get points when your spy master is off someplace spying and studying technology. So you get a lot more control about where you spend these points too, so it's kind of a pretty big difference in terms of the technology system. Definitely no problem in the court. These last couple of counties have proven to be extremely difficult. Good. There it is. Sorry, King Conan. We're just going to have to invade you now. This has got to be a little depressing from Brittany's standpoint, but this shouldn't take long at all. Make sure I get all these disbanded, including the one way out there in Persia. Oh! Oh! Now that's interesting. Okay, so I had 2 sons, and now my heir is one of my daughters. Me no like. Alright. This is actually fairly nervous business here because being old, King Jehan the Third could die any day. And until this is resolved satisfactorily, Jehan the Third's heir is, one of his daughters, Elaine. Anybody else? No. Alright, let's try it. Got all my levies all raised up. Alright, he's gonna fight me for it. I wouldn't want it any other way. I just gotta get this done first. Alright, yes, we'll definitely accept. Try Lyon, and then we'll try to finish up the peninsula if we can. Taking a risk here, taking extra time to see to this. All of this can be a matter of days. A fine tale. Good deal. So I had to take the Prince Bishopric from him to give it back to him. Well, first he's not in my court, then I had to invite him in my court. Oh, wow. What a mess. What a mess. Well, at least I got the number 2 son. At least I got the number 2 son. Okay, so this is the new technology screen here. Basically, it just lets you choose what technology you want to get. So it's a lot less opaque than the old technology system. I'm sure it does much the same thing, though. Fleet levies, yep, they're not there. Nothing good to be got that way. Let's do that. Let's finish this up. Let's get the de jure kingdom of Aquitaine finished up in Jehan the Third's lifetime. Alright, let's get as many troops involved in this as we can. Oh, you're not there anymore? Wonder why. Have to check in on that. That barony over there has just always been an interesting thing. It's just not been of any use, really. Illness. Not good. Not good. Something strange going on there. Alright, let's just get over there. Yeah, coming that way, and then I can come into that. Okay, alright. Alright. Mostly just going to release these children prisoners. Yeah, don't need you doing that. Yes, yes, all forgiven. Pushing these salts a little fast. Okay. So I gather these two hosts together. I don't know why I didn't have them jump in earlier. Oh well. All right. All right, we'll accept. Very nice, very nice. Now the jure kingdom of Aquitaine is complete. Oh, that's too bad. Oh. King Jehan the Third perished after disbanding his troops on the last battle of the last war to reunite the de jure kingdom of Aquitaine.